Hi, everyone. I'm going to be speaking to you today about a very important transit, and that's the transit of Pluto into Aquarius today. I'm filming this on the 19th of November, and Pluto will stay fully in Aquarius until January 2044. So we're looking at almost 20 years of this transit. So it's very, very important. It happens today at the 19th of November at 3:29 p.m. Eastern and 8:29 p.m. UK time. And many of us will feel that shift of energy from Capricorn being slow, heavy earth into air, because although the symbolism for Aquarius is the water bearer, it's actually an air sign. And the energy will really start to pick up, the pace will start to pick up, things will become even faster than they have been. And particularly from July next year onwards, when Uranus starts to move into Gemini, also an air sign, things will go phenomenally quickly in terms of new inventions of all kinds to do with communications. And it's going to be a whole new world. It's going to be a very different episode for humanity. So I think a very big question to ask yourself at this time, a great question to go into 2025, is what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be human? And I think that's one of the very big themes of Pluto in Aquarius. And what does it mean to be human for you? Because I think there are going to be various pressures to increase our convenience by having, they already exist, as we know. In Sweden, I think Sweden was one of the first countries to introduce microchips in people's hands if they wanted to buy their train tickets faster. And this is going to spread in terms of being more convenient and quicker for you. But I just suggest think wisely, think strategically, think long term about those things, because what appears to be short term convenience can turn into something very different. So, what does it mean to be human? And I think the other big question is, what are you becoming? You know, after these last 4 or 5 years that have been very grueling for most of us, many of us, what and who are you becoming? Can you tune in to your higher self at this time, your future self, and see where you are headed in this very different episode for humanity? And it really is, actually. Now, Pluto is the planet of power. The symbolism of Pluto is death, transformation, and rebirth. And my favorite way of explaining that is when a tree dies and falls in the wood, and it rots in a wood and it rots down because it's died, but it produces fertile soil. It transforms its state to produce fertile soil for new life to begin. So it's death, transformation, and rebirth. And Aquarius is the sign of the future. It's the sign of freedom, big freedom movements. Pluto is often linked to big mass movements. I can see that happening as we speak. Issues around not only freedom, but human rights, civil rights, freedom of speech, greater equality, technical innovation of all kinds around aviation. I think there'll be a lot around medical innovation, a lot around innovation to do with energy, free energy, many, many areas. AI is an obvious one that is moving exponentially now. The whole socio-economic structure and political structure will change radically over these coming years. It won't all happen today on the 19th of November. This is just the very beginning of a shift of the power to the people. But as the years progress, and if we look back to historical cycles, that's exactly what happened, as I've mentioned in previous videos. In fact, I'll put a video below that I filmed in early 2023 called Pluto in Aquarius, and it covers quite a lot of the historical data. So rather than me repeating it all over again today, you can check that out as well. And it's really helpful to look at the big picture, the big historical picture. So society will gradually become, in the best possible way, more horizontal. Governments will become much smaller. It's also the sign of truth, a lot more truth, power to truth. A lot more truth is going to be revealed as we move forwards. And in the coming times, and it may happen actually quite quickly because I can see it unraveling right now, there could well be a crisis around science and technology and how fully that has been for our highest good. Just as when Pluto moved into Capricorn in 2008, within a short time, there was a crisis around the financial structure. So because Capricorn's about big banking, wealth, stock market, etc. We are going to really find that we are much more creative and inventive. There's going to be a lot more of the out there. And by the out there, I mean, as I say, huge developments in aviation, much greater galactic connections, galactic understandings, much greater understanding of the cosmos. That will expand radically. Who knows what that will do to my astrology. There'll be a lot more understanding of how everything operates on freedom and energy, which of course it always has done. We just haven't been collectively very aware of it. So the two jaggedy lines that form the glyph of Aquarius, we are really going to be understanding our mastery, getting to grips with our mastery around frequency and energy. And frequency and energy is going to be the source of all healing, whether it's sound technologies, music, energy, receiving energy in different ways. So we are going to be shifting, as Pluto's just today shifting out of Capricorn, from a very 3D tangible existence to do with structures and permanency and long-term jobs and homes and all that kind of thing, to a much greater sense of our multidimensionality, Aquarius multidimensionality. And there are going to be a lot of technologies coming forwards. I mean, Apple have this already. I can't quite remember the name of their glasses, and I think Google have it too, where you can put on these particular glasses and it takes you into a state of other dimensions. We're going to have a lot more of those to kind of act as jump leads for us into this greater sense of multidimensionality, but much greater creativity and innovation. We are going to continue to come together with like-minded others. That's one of the best possible expressions of Pluto in Aquarius. This is just the beginning of 20 years of the power shifting to the people. Pluto power, Aquarius people. Much greater humanitarianism, much greater sense of equality across the world. And what I'm describing here is this transit at its best. So getting together with people online, but ideally people in person, physically, will serve you extremely well. You may find that old friendships, old groups that you've been involved in fall away, but the new communities that you're making are going to lead you into the future. So yes, so and grassroots connections, grassroots information coming to us via those communities and connecting to other communities locally and globally. That's where we're going to be headed. It won't just be top-down rules and regulations and instructions. It will be going to get so much information, obviously from the internet, but also through local networks and global networks in other ways, groups connecting together. And I've talked about this in the past as well. Now, this is much more revolutionary, rebellious energy. If you look back in history, and again, I detailed the history in that previous video. If we look back to the early English settlers that left England because of the burdensome taxes of King George, Pluto is linked to taxes, debt, default, deficits, all of those things. But it was the burdensome taxes that really drove those early English settlers to discover to land in America, the land of the free, and begin to form what became America as it is now in the 1700s. And that was during a Pluto in Aquarius transit. Then we had what was coming up to a Pluto in Aquarius transit for sure. Then we had the French Revolution, one of the biggest examples I've shared with you regularly. And that was when it was a very greedy, obese, overly rich monarchy of King Louis, and the peasants were desperately poor and starving. And so they stormed the Bastille in July 1789, and they took down the monarchy. Monarch was beheaded, and from that time going forwards, France didn't have a monarch again. It became a republic, and all of that birthed democracy across Europe. That was the beginning of it, with the Declaration of the Rights of Man that was published by the Assemblée Nationale just a month after the storming of the Bastille. Now, the French Revolution, that was 12 years into the transit of Pluto in Aquarius. We're not going to have to wait that long for that kind of revolution. It's happening right now. I mean, as I speak today, the UK farmers are up in London in their tractors, in their thousands, protesting at Parliament against a very recent policy by the government. It was a change in inheritance tax. And what that means is, again, tax, Pluto. And what it means is that farms in the UK that have been in their family for generations, just passed down to the children and to the children, etc., because the inheritance tax bill will be so great on the death of the father that the younger generation will be forced to sell the farm in order to pay the inheritance tax bill rather than keeping the farm within the family as it has been for generations. So there is a massive protest happening up in London today. So it'll be interesting to see what comes of that, because you don't mess with the farmers because they are our food production. And of course, isn't it so interesting that Uranus, planet of revolution, is also in Taurus, farming, food production, agriculture. The same has been happening very widely in France over similar issues, and also for many, many months in the Netherlands, when the government again was trying to buy up the farmland. There seems to be quite a widespread, this has been happening in America, it's quite widespread that other interests are buying up food production land. So we will see what comes of this, but already that rebellious revolutionary energy is becoming very, very close. I think there's going to be a lot of social unrest that we're going to see for various reasons across the next 20 years. It's being birthed from a sense of being on the periphery, not having a voice, not being heard, and extreme inequality in many societies. And this will prompt some kind of shift in the way society is structured. And remember that Uranus doesn't fully move out of Taurus until 2026. It's going to be in Taurus certainly the first half of next year. So that's going to be interesting to see, because that's going to fuel all these protests around food production and farms. And once the farmland is gone, it's gone forever. And it's very hard to reinstate. And just to remind you, this isn't all a perfect potential. All of this is potential. Every astrological expression and aspect is about potential. And it's how we as the collective weave that energy in terms of how it will manifest in the world. It hasn't yet manifested its raw potential as astrology, as symbolism, etc. We have to weave it onto the tapestry to make it manifest. But there's a very clear shadow expression, negative expression of Pluto in Aquarius in 3 words: control by technology, control by technology. And we can see this with a lot of addictions to your mobile phone, particularly with younger people. It can take the form of extremism and fanaticism, and again, control from the top by technology. Check out the Chinese social credit system if you don't know what I'm talking about. There are YouTube videos about that. Just take a look at how life in China, individuals' lives in China, are controlled by the credit score, the social credit score on their mobile phone. So this shift towards digitization, which is, yes, more convenient, and yes, it's given us the internet as well, which is amazing for us to connect. It does very much have a shadow side. And again, I'd advise you to choose wisely, choose consciously, and think long term. That's why I pretty much never use my mobile phone. I've said this many times. I only switch it on if I need a verification code. Apart from that, it's switched off. I refuse to have my life run by my mobile phone. And people who know me kind of chuckle at me, but it's a very conscious decision. Yes, I use a computer on a daily basis, but I will not get into that phone addiction. And that's very deliberate and very conscious. So I think it's very interesting with all these revolutionary, rebellious protesting energies that if we look at the centaur Nessus, who I've talked about before, Nessus, that is currently at 17 of Pisces. And today, Jupiter at 17 of Gemini is squaring Nessus. So Jupiter is expanding that symbolism of the buck stops here. The buck stops here, this far and no further. So that is going to fuel this sense of social unrest and protest. By late January, early February, Nessus and Saturn come into conjunction, and I think that will be another pivotal time of the buck stops here too. Also, I think mental health will be a big issue, particularly amongst young people. And so being in nature, grounding, bare feet on the earth, bare feet on the grass, weather allows. I hardly dare suggest that if you live in England, but if you can get bare feet on the grass, that will serve you extremely well to kind of diffuse all this buzzy head energy, because Aquarius is ruled by Uranus, and this is to do with higher mind, but it's also like the kind of zzz on a television set. It's too much mental overload and input without the grounding. So grounding, being in nature, will serve you extremely well to kind of decompress and diffuse some of these energies. Now, personally, Pluto brings really major life change. All of you at some point will have had a major Pluto transit in your life, and these bring about permanent changes. It's like a snake shedding a skin. And actually, it's very interesting that 2025 in Chinese astrology is the year of the snake, because Pluto transits literally feel like a snake shedding a skin. It will never be the same again. When I had Pluto transiting over my ascendant, and that's the marriage axis, ascendant, descendant, that was the death to my marriage. That was the end of my marriage. It was very literal symbolism and super clear. And so if you have, and I'm speaking here from, as I say, November 2024, next year Pluto will be moving between kind of principally 0 to 3 degrees of Aquarius. So if you have any planets or angles between 0 and 3 degrees of Aquarius, you will be receiving a Pluto transit between now and the end of 2025. And obviously from then on, it's moving forwards. But it hovers around a degree for up to 2 years. So obviously it depends which planet or angle it's hitting in your chart, and that gets into too much detail for this video. But essentially what Pluto transits in general bring in is intensity, big time intensity. They often bring up issues around manipulation, control, power issues where you feel powerless. It can be quite stressful. But the ultimate purpose of a Pluto transit is always your empowerment, always your own empowerment. And very often you have to get to the end of that kind of 18-month, 2-year period to get the gift from Pluto. And I remember that going through an incredibly difficult couple of years at many levels and for many reasons. But then when I stepped out of that big Pluto transit across my ascendant, boy, did I step into a much greater sense of my own power. So this is what Pluto transits are about. And I want to say in Aquarius in general, this is going to be for all of us to some degree, stepping into our sovereignty, having a much greater sense of your unique essence for everybody, your unique essence, your authenticity at a higher level than you've ever felt it or lived it before, higher level than you felt it or lived it before. And so it's also a much greater sense of what is your unique contribution to the whole, to the group, to the community. And it will give you a much greater sense of expansion of your consciousness when it works optimally, and clarity. Aquarius is very good for pure truth. That's why I think we'll see even more secrets coming to light. And clarity. You get super clear on who you are, why you're here, what you're doing here, etc. So that's the upside. But coming back to it personally, if you have any planets between 0 and 3 degrees of Aquarius, you'll feel that most strongly. Any planet, any angle, like ascendant, midheaven, etc. You'll also feel this very strongly if you have 0 to 3 degrees of any fixed sign. So the other fixed signs are Taurus, Leo, Scorpio. You're going to feel that intensity. You're going to feel those power issues, that control, that manipulation. The purpose is for you to step into your empowerment in a bigger way, step into your sovereignty. If you have any planets 0 to 3 degrees of the other air signs, Gemini, Libra, this could be really creative for you. It will really deepen your need to connect to other people socially. It can be very creative. Equally, if you have those degrees in Sagittarius or Aries, there's a real sense of inventiveness, creativity, ignition to a higher level. So just observe, because that's the sextile either way. So just observe, really observe what is coming in for you. But that's going to be all through 2025. And yes, we are going to see gradually this shift of the power to the people, but it's going to take a little bit of time. It isn't going to all happen this week or this month or this year. And also, I think it's fascinating that this time period that's being started now with Pluto's move into Aquarius is also linking in with that great conversation I had with Richard Rudd, talking about the new human and his very evolutionary, his probably most famous gene key, which is gene key 55, which is evolutionary gene key. And he talks about the beginning of this genetic mutation, which is going to sort of take humanity to a higher level than it's ever been, beginning at the end of January 2025 and taking 3 years to manifest into 2027, end of 2027. And he calls that gene key the shift from victim to freedom over the next 3 years. So what he was seeing, he knows really very little about astrology, he admitted very honestly, really links in with this Pluto in Aquarius transit. So we are going to understand, as I say, we're going to master our energy and frequency in terms of how we can shift to higher dimensions. And we are going to be shifting to higher dimensions. We're going to be much more psychically sensitive. Neptune's at the last couple of degrees of its of its sign in Pisces. We're going to see so much more of the clairvoyance, clairsentience, clairaudience, etc., coming in, claircognizance coming in 2025 for all of us. And also just know that for those people who are having mental health issues and struggling, because Neptune is going to be hovering around that 29th degree of Pisces for some of next year and at just the very beginning of 2026, that's really going to bring in a huge amount of compassion for the rest of us to come together. So in our weekly meditations, etc., we are going to be really upping the degree of compassion, because people in horrific circumstances like war zones like Gaza right now, etc., they don't have the resources, they don't have the headspace, they don't even have enough food or medicines. They can't do this themselves. We have to do it for them. We have to increase the consciousness of the collective through our own efforts, through compassion, to help them get out of a situation which eventually, as we raise our consciousness, becomes utterly unthinkable. I mean, it's unthinkable to me how we can be in a state of war at this time in our history. It's absolutely unthinkable. And so these old ways of being, these old structures that have, initiated wars, are crumbling. And I think we can all see that very clearly. They will continue to crumble, but the other way, they will transform. Partly it'll be crumbling. They just stop functioning because the energy, the evolutionary energy, is no longer supporting that. The evolutionary energy is going towards this Aquarius energy, as I'm describing here. But the other way this will happen, and wonderful Zach, the aspect of the Ascended Master Dwal Kul, channeled by my good friend Janet Trelaw. I was in conversation with Zach just recently, and he said the other way this is going to happen is, the chief executive of a large corporation goes home. He has a big title on his office door. He has a very big salary. He has a very flash car. He has a beautiful home. And he gets home and his children say to him, "What have you done for the dolphins and the whales and the turtles today, Daddy?" And I feel, and that is another way that consciousness will shift within some of these big companies. Consciousness will shift because it's the children that are bringing in this higher consciousness as well. A lot of the children being born now are genius children, and they are going to be our leaders for the future, not in any traditional way. The last thing they would want is to be a top-down leader and telling other people what to do. It's the absolute last thing they will do. They just bring forth incredible wisdom, galactic wisdom, and people will want to group around them, gather around them with their visionary ideas and innovations to make those changes happen. And that's really, we're on the precipice of that beginning now. And so, and the other thing I'd like to share here, because this is all about part of the people, but individually regaining our sovereignty, stepping into that sense of inner authority. And I'd just like to touch back on something I was saying in the last update about, we've been encouraged to defer our energy to external authority figures, be it the teacher, the policeman, the government, whatever. And when we do that, we are in a situation of scattering our energy potentially. And, just hypothetically, I'm not talking predictively in any way here. I'm just talking hypothetically that, say, there's been an election recently. I mean, as there has in my own country just a few months ago. And, people in this country might have had high hopes for a particular leader. And they might have been very excited when that particular leader gained power. But say that particular leader doesn't come up to scratch. Say he doesn't deliver against the policies that he promised. He changes tack. You can go on a real emotional roller coaster with any change of policy or direction or, here and there by our so-called leaders. You're going to be on an absolute emotional roller coaster, and it's going to be exhausting. So that's another very good reason for learning to live from the inside out and choosing our emotion that we're going to dominate our days with, rather than the outside in, where your energies, you're just going to be exhausted. There's going to be so much happening 2025 onwards. It's going to be so fast, so dynamic, so eventful. Even if we're living from the inside out, it's going to be hard enough to keep up. But if you're living from the outside in, it's going to be very hard to keep any sense of sovereignty. So I really encourage you to look at it from that point of view as well. And I also want to say that in a time when misery is encouraged, love and joy are some of your greatest acts of defiance. I really want to say that strongly, because people often accuse me of, la-di-da, and living in fairy tale land, and, living in love and joy and get real. And they are acts of defiance. I absolutely refuse to do what others may encourage me to feel like in my days, because that's just wasting my life, wasting my power, wasting my energy. To me, they are acts of defiance, and love is a fire. Love is incredibly strong. And with Nessus, the buck stops at, this far and no further. We are all equal humanity. We truly are. We are all equal humanity, and we haven't been encouraged to think that way all through our lives, and probably many, many lives. This is the time, Pluto in Aquarius, that has the potential to shift. But it's down to us as to whether we take that opportunity or we drift into shadow side of control by technology, groupthink, fanaticism, because that's a very easy road to take. Just be slippage, convenient slippage. So that's why I'm encouraging you to be very conscious and wise, because it's down to us. It's down to the collective, down to each one of us in terms of the choices we take. But boy, is this one heck of an opportunity for humanity. This is part of this unique quantum jump that humanity is on the brink of making. We're in the process already, actually, as many of you can feel. But Pluto in Aquarius is a big, big ingredient in this quantum jump of humanity's evolution. I could not say that. If I wasn't English, I'd be shouting right now. And finally, I'd just like to touch on several countries. I did this in the video below, actually, but I just want to update it a little bit. Several countries that are going to be receiving in 2025 this Pluto in Aquarius transit of 0 to 3 degrees of Aquarius. And I'll put these countries below with their chart details so any astrologers can go and calculate the charts. I won't go through every date and time here because it gets very tedious. Okay, the UK chart. I just kind of know that off by heart in my head. That's the 1st of January, 1880, 1801 chart, as many astrologers know. Transiting Pluto is going to be squaring Jupiter in that chart at 1 degree of Leo, 1 degree of a fixed sign. That is in the 10th house, the house of government and leadership in the UK. How is that going to be transformed? And also Jupiter rules the 3rd house of media. So great potential through next year for the government and leadership and the way media operates in this country to be transformed in some way. I never know how. I never know the events. Ukraine, interestingly enough, has its sun, SUN, at 1 degree of Aquarius, its midheaven at 2 degrees of Aquarius. So we could see some, again, major transformation in the status of that country next year. Russia. Pluto, transiting Pluto, is still squaring the ascendant. That's at 29 degrees of Libra, admittedly 29 degrees of cardinal sign, but that Pluto transit is still catching that. It's still within orb. So it's squaring the ascendant of Russia. It's squaring the moon of Russia. That's the people, and also conjunct the Saturn, the structure of Russia. And I've mentioned in recent videos that the Saturn-Neptune conjunction that we have coming up through 25 and 26 historically has always been a redefinition of Russia, in some redefining of its identity and often its boundaries. So that's going to be very interesting in terms of how the war plays out. Netherlands, another one, ascendant 0 degrees of Scorpio, so Pluto is squaring that ascendant, transforming the identity of the Netherlands. Greece has its sun, SUN, at 0 of Leo. So again, Pluto, transiting Pluto is squaring the identity of Greece. And the sun in that chart rules the second house of the country's money and income in economy. So that could be transformed in some way. I do think the EU, and from, memory, yes, it's moon. The moon for the EU is at 24 degrees of Taurus. So that has been receiving both the transit of Uranus still right now and the full supermoon that we had last Friday as well. So I do feel that the people will become much more rebellious, and it's going to be a lot of revolution in Europe, and the economy is going to go through some major changes as well. I've spoken about that before. China's a really big one. It has its moon, the people, at 3 degrees of Aquarius, so transiting Pluto will be conjunct the moon, and the ascendant, so that'll be through 25 and 26, and the ascendant is a little further on at 5 degrees of Aquarius, so that's 26 and 27. I could well see another people's revolution in China. The people starting to feel so intense as this great Aquarian energy of equality rises to the fore, that there could well be another revolution in China, and that would redefine the identity of the country through 26 and 27. We'll have to wait and see. But an incredibly powerful time. Oh, yes, and the UN, United Nations, has its sun, SUN, at 1 degree of Scorpio. So Pluto is going to be squaring that. So big organizations like the United Nations, I've mentioned NATO in the past, they're all part of that Capricornian structure. And by the way, you may have been aware that at the full supermoon, I was talking about that with truth coming to light, with Uranus conjunct the moon, and also the sun was in Scorpio, that secrets could come to light that had been long repressed, and to do with underground, underhand, kind of taboo subjects, sexual things, criminal things. And you may be aware that there was a big scandal in the Church of England, because it was revealed that hundreds of victims had gone off to Christian summer camps many years ago, and been physically and sexually abused by a particular man there, and that the senior members of the church had really been deaf to what was going on. And as a result of that, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, resigned. So it's been quite a big scandal in the UK. And things of that nature, or, because the people who were children at the time, children and teenagers, it's just destroyed their lives in terms of mental health. And they haven't been able psychologically to come forwards until more recently. And so we're going to see that kind of thing, taboo things, sexual things, criminal things, underhand, underground. They're going to be coming to light in a much bigger way. And that may, of course, be linked to Neptune and the last few degrees of Pisces. That's linked to industries of film and glamour. And I'm sure you understand what I'm saying here. So a lot in there today, but today feels exciting. And today feels exciting as incredibly different and fast moving potential that we can really start to jump onto and ride the wave of this very fast ascension of humanity that has already begun. I hope that's helpful for you. And I'm going to be back very soon, having a conversation with Nancy Rebecca tomorrow, I think, in fact, more information about the blue light beings. I love Nancy's work, and so I'm going to be putting out another video in the next day or so. Hope this helps. God bless. Bye for now.